Okay.
I call the April 24th, 2018 work session of Portsmouth City Council to order. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Clark.
Okay.
Mrs. Lucas-Burt. Here. Mr. Moody.
Here.
Ms. Simmons. Here. Mr. Smith.
Here.
Dr. Whitaker. Mayor Rowe.
Here. Dr. Pat.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and members of City Council. This evening we have one presentation, and it's the School Safety Improvement Project presented by the City Manager. I will begin with the School Safety Improvement Project. With the recent events relating to safety of our nation's students, school safety is more important today than ever before. It is of critical importance that we keep our students safe. Recent national events have underscored the need to take all appropriate measures to protect our children from harm and create a safe learning environment by improving school safety. During my budget message on March 26, I recommended the City Council authorize an immediate $1 million from the general fund balance as a one-time allocation, and staff would begin an immediate review of school security measures and identify where security enhancements are necessary. Superintendent Bracey and the City Manager met several times with staff and discussed the school safety measures that would significantly enhance safety measures for Portsmouth Public Schools. The following security upgrades and items are proposed for the expenditure of the $1 million immediately. Radio upgrades for school security officers, school administrators, and other key personnel. The second, security digital cameras at 13 elementary schools and 2 middle schools. The third, security stations at the entrance of all 23 schools with wiring. And the fourth, a Rapture Technologies visitor management system, a system that is able to perform background checks for all school visitors. The system will be placed in all 22 schools. The proposed costs for these projects are $826,520. With a plus 20% of contingency, it comes to $991,824. The question was asked whether or not the schools have metal detectors. Our high schools have metal detectors, and our junior high schools have metal detectors. And the number of 23 that includes the preschools in the number count for the items of which we are speaking. Dr. Bracey and his team, both their procurement officer, Mr. Ziegler, who's in charge of operations, our procurement officer, all have worked together, and these are the recommendations that they put forward for your consideration. Tonight, you will have an item on the agenda, and that item That item is 18-158, creation and funding of school safety improvement projects, and it will be an adoption of an ordinance amending the education category of the FY 2018 Capital Improvement Fund budget to establish a new project title, School Safety Improvements, appropriating $1 million from the FY 2018 unassigned general fund balance to the FY 2018 general fund. And 3, transferring $1 million from the FY 2018 general fund to the School Safety Improvements Project in the education category of the FY 2018 Capital Improvement Fund budget. Are there any questions?
Questions about this important? Yes.
I have 2 questions. First, a question that coming under education. Is that the only place to put this?
Say that again.
A question that's coming under the education fund.
Well,
Or is it going to be separated out within that?
right, it's going to be in the CIP. It's going to be in the CIP.
Okay.
And it's the category in there will be education category, but it will be entitled School Safety Improvements.
So we'll see it as a separate
That's
line
right.
item. Okay.
That's right.
Okay. The
Yeah.
second question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The second question, I had a citizen just today send me a photograph, which I have just emailed to you, of a black SUV that says Portsmouth Public Schools, School Safety and Security on the side of the doors, that they said it's been parked in the garage here for the last month or so. They see it in the garage a lot. I'm just curious what it is and why would it be here?
Well, I will follow up, have staff note, and I will follow up with Dr.
I just sent
Bracey
it to you
and then
just
get an
before you
answer.
started speaking.
And get an answer back to you.
Public use tags on there? Can you tell?
I've seen it in the garage.
I have never seen it.
Bill?
You had mentioned the schools have metal detectors. Are they being monitored?
According to the conversation I've had with the superintendent, they are not monitored every day, but there are, I guess, during the week times that they monitor them.
But they're not monitored every day.
I'm certain they are not monitored every day. And I did share, Mr. Moody, that you had inquired about that, and that was a concern that you have.
It's a big concern. If they're not monitored every day, they're not effective every day. And as fate usually has it, that could be the time when something bad slips through.
Well, I will make sure I go back to Dr. Bracey and express that they do have the monitors here. He has assured me all 3 middle schools, all 3 high schools, I've gone in, walked through them, and I've seen them. Not that anyone was monitored when I walked through, but that it is a concern that expressed that we'd like to see them monitored on a regular basis.
Lisa?
Yes, I think my question might be similar to Vice Mayor Simmons. So the additional funding that's coming out of the general fund, that's not going to be added to the $52.8 million. This is just going to increase their CIP amounts that we're giving towards education.
Here, it's coming out of the fund balance.
Fund balance.
And it's a one-time $1 million,
Okay.
and it's not going into their amount of proposed this year, 52.8.
Right.
It's over in CIP, and it's now.
Right.
Right, it has nothing to do with the
budget
considered
coming ahead.
2019.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay.
And all these things that we're acquiring with $1 million, are they going to be in place by the start of the school year?
Yes, that is why we brought the procurement officers in. Once this is approved, if council approves it tonight, we're ready to start working on getting these items in place, because during the summer, the security desk and things will have to be put in place. So yes, when the school opens, these things will be in place. So we've met, we know what they're going to get, they know what they're going to get, and both procurement officers are working together.
Explain one more time about the database for visitors.
Yes. There is a database that's by the Rhinor Group, and the Rhinor Group has a system of which when you come into schools, and I am familiar with it because in the state of Florida, all schools that you go in, you have to submit your driver's license, and it is a small piece of equipment that they put your driver's license in, scan it, similar like when you go to the doctor now, they take your medical card and put it through there. That system will be able to identify First, if you're wanted for something, if you're a child predator, if you're on a list or something, it would alert. So all Florida schools have that. And another thing that I shared is that all Florida schools are fenced in. There are no schools in Broward County in particular that you can walk on the campus. They all are fenced in. And someone said to me, well, Parkland was fenced in, but still the young man. Fence is open. It's 2:30. It's time for those who are driving to get out, and came in an Uber. So that's what that Reiner technology, and that's one's being used across the nation.
And each of our schools will have this database capability
Yes.
and scanning equipment.
Yes, all 23. That includes our preschools also.
Other questions?
That's a lot of stuff for that much money.
Yeah,
Yes,
it really is.
right. So we're.
What's the longest lead time on?
I'm not certain, Mayor, which would be the longest lead time. I'm thinking getting the security cameras and getting them all in place would be the longest lead time. As I indicated, that we're only putting them in 13 schools because the other schools have them. So we have 13 elementary schools and 2 middle. The high schools already have up-to-date cameras. So that would probably take the longest, because that would, the mounting, the wiring, the ordering, all of that, and the strategic placement of them. And we're also going to have, as we try to always partner, have Mr. Daniel Jones also to work with them.
Other questions? All right, let's go to our second item.
All right, the second item is, the second item, I was getting ready to review the city manager's report, but I would just pause and say, members of council, for 10 weeks, we have stood before you and presented the budget. And tonight I was getting ready to put those slides back up there and go through the same slides that I've gone through with you 10 weeks. So if there are any questions that you would like to ask as it relates to anything, we do have a public hearing tonight on all aspects, which includes our action plan and our CIP and our operating budget.
A matter of order. Last night it was a consensus of council that we place the briefing that you gave us on the school budget and the general fund.
Yes.
On this agenda. And so we'll do that right before public hearing. That seems to be the place that makes sense. And that way the public can see it, and if they want to speak about what they've seen, they have the opportunity in the public hearing.
Mm-hmm. And
Is that agreeable with everyone?
That makes good sense.
Go ahead.
And Mayor, I'd like to remind council, I sent an email to you all early in the week with your concurrence. After I make that presentation, if I could be excused, I will have eye surgery very early in the morning, and there are some procedures. I did have the eye marked today, but there are some things that I have to do. So Deputy City Manager Pace will sit in my stead. Okay.
Yes, sir. Bill.
While we're on the subject of the budget, I think you asked were there any other things to bring up reference to the budget. Once again, I like to address the retiree police and fire folks. We talk a lot about poverty, and some of these people are certainly near that level, if they aren't even under that level. And I'm talking about fire and police retirees, not overall. And I think we should do the right thing, the moral thing, and grant them their $75 that they're speaking of. These people have performed admirably in the course of protecting our city as firefighters and as police officers on the street. And I think we need to do the right thing by them now and come up with a way to fund this. So tonight I'm asking for consensus for the management to come back with some options on how to do it in our budget that will be adopted in a few weeks.
All right, any questions of Bill?
I thought we had, I thought we had already agreed based on some other things the manager showed us that this was going to have to come through the retirement board.
Well, you know, the retirement board is the retirement board. Ultimately, the buck stops with council. Retirement board, I'm not talking about taking money out of the retirement fund. If that was the case, I think it'd still have to come back to council. But I'm talking about us, council. We're the decision makers, not the volunteer members of the retirement board. So, once again, I'm asking for consensus to come back to task staff with coming back with some options on how to do it.
You're not asking for the consensus to do it tonight. You're asking that we give the go-ahead for the city manager to do the work.
Correct.
To get
Correct.
Does anybody have any problem with that?
I don't know to have a problem with it, but the issue is you know, what we've looked at in the past with, I believe it was over $500,000 for the $500 that we did most recently. This current fiscal year, we did $500 July 1st and $500 this previous January the 1st. So that was $1,000 supplement within this fiscal year. $75 a month would be $900 per person per year. So that would be a lot more than what that last $500 was. And as it stands, this current budget, public safety, general service employees, as it stands right now, there's not going to be a pay increase for anyone this year because everybody got one last year. And I mean, I guess we can see where the money is, but I think that's a lot of money this late in the game. That I think that's a lot, being that, you know, like I said, $500 twice in this current fiscal year and $500 in the previous fiscal year. So that's something to be considered as well, because I know Dr. Patton's worked very hard. We still have current employees making less than $30,000, and that's something that was addressed partially last year and some this year. That's a long-term thing to get those corrected. So I think we have, you know, other things that we need to look at the same time.
And we need to address that as well, but theirs is not a salary increase, it's a cost of living increase that they have not received in some time. In fact, it's been the practice of councils up until approximately 3 years ago that when General Wage received a COLA, that retirees would receive 50% of it. And it was to prevent retirees having to come before council and during the budget season and beg for a COLA, quite frankly, and it worked. It worked. And so anyway, Mayor, that's my request.
Well, and that's, you know, and using that, you know, I did, you know, the math last year, and unfortunately a lot of them are making a very low salary for the year. But as it stood last year, if we had went with that process, you know, they would have gotten to 1.25%, which would have been half of the 2.5 of the general wage employees. They actually, a majority of them got more money within the supplement than what the percentage would have been. So it put more money in their pocket. So, you know, in theory, last year, a lot of them got way more than what would have been the 1.25%. And, you know, I like what you're saying in the past, how it was done. And if that was something we would like to get back to this year, nobody's getting a raise, so there wouldn't be a half. And the other thing is we also had a supplemental retirement employees. You know, in all fairness, if we were going to give it to one group of retirees, you know, all of them were very valuable assets to the city, then it should be all retirees and not just one group pitted against the other.
Well, we've addressed fire and police before and salary increases, so there is a precedence for that. And also, a bonus is not a COLA. A bonus, as you know, is a one-time event. So that's a big difference.
the way I understand it, Bill is asking for consensus of us to ask the city manager to come back with options. This is not a go-ahead, but to use her time to come up with the options. Anybody against that? Dr. Woodard?
Will that also include information? I believe there was the actuary person who gave some input as to the impact of this increase over the long term. I thought there was a report given that could have some significant impacts. So if
It should.
when those options come, if that can be included to keep us abreast of
Sure.
those impacts.
It should, yes.
Yes.
Mr. Ashby has.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council, Dr. Whitaker is correct. There has been discussion both here before the city council as well as before the retirement board that the pattern that the city has taken in the past has some implications in terms of it being deemed a de facto policy and therefore having a negative impact on the retirement board's current status overall. We can certainly reach out to the actuary. I'm not sure about the timing of it in terms of getting that information out, but that was a consideration for the retirement board at its last meeting. And as some of you may or may not know, those meetings are published. They deferred acting until they can get the fund on a more stable basis, much in line with the comments you received last night from Davenport with regard to the issue of the 80%.
Okay. What I'm hearing, and I'm summing up, that it would be a consensus with the impact on the fund as determined by the actuary. Nate, you mentioned non-police and fire. What would be the option to make that for all retirees? And someone mentioned living wage for employees. That was Nate, too?
Yes.
It's a living wage. Living wage.
All right. So, understanding that this is not a decision tonight, but asking the city manager to bring back options with the cost-benefit analysis.
Yeah, it's
Got
fact
it?
finding.
Okay. All right.
Okay. With that, Mayor, members of council, I'll go through the city manager's report.
Okay.
We have 5 items tonight. I have presented one. We have the Elevate SNAP Employment and Training Project, which is adoption of an ordinance accepting funding from the United States Department of Agriculture through the Virginia Department of Social Services in the amount of $45,005.63 and appropriating said amount to the FY18 Social Service Fund for the Elevate SNAP Employment and Training Pilot Program. This program, which our city has been selected, and there are 3,760 participants across the state in this program. And it helps our persons who are at a position to prepare for job readiness assistance, including help with industry-specific job skills training, industry certifications, and or gaining a GED or high school equivalency credentials. So we have about 40 persons through our social services that will benefit from this. The next, which I've already talked about, the creation of the funding for the School Safety Improvement Project. We have Trees for Clean Water Program grants, adoption of an ordinance accepting Virginia Trees for Clean Water Program grants in the amount of $3,300 from the Virginia Department of Forestry, and appropriating said funds in the FY 2018 Grants Fund for use by the Department of Parks, Recreation, and Leisure Services for the planting of trees along city roadways. And these, that's actually $3,300. There'll be 17 redbud rising sun trees planted along Cavalier Boulevard near the Freedom Avenue intersection, and 23 magnolia greenback trees on the Brandon Lane median near the intersection of Hedgegrove Lane. Adoption of an ordinance, it's the FY 2018 budget transfer for legal services. Adoption of an ordinance authorizing the transfer of $450,000 from unexpended non-departmental line items in the FY 2018 general fund budget to the city attorney's legal contractual service line item in the FY 2018 general fund budget. And there is no impact to the fund balance as the transfers between budgeted categories in the general fund. And lastly, an amendment to correct an error in Newport Avenue closure ordinance. Adoption of an ordinance amending Ordinance 1978-133 titled, an ordinance closing the following street, a portion of Newport Avenue for the purpose of correcting a patent error in the legal description included in said ordinance. On December 12, 1978, City Council adopted a street closure ordinance, and the ordinance was 1978-133, purporting to close Newport Avenue between High Street and King Street. The legal description of the closure area included in the ordinance encompassed the area directly east of Newport Avenue and did not encompass any portion of Newport Avenue. The legal description was a clear and obvious error. An adoption of the closure ordinance in 1978, the area of Newport Avenue between High Street and King Street was physically closed and continued as a public street. And discontinued as a public street, and the area has since been incorporated into other parcels. The error in this legal description in Ordinance 1978-133 was recently discovered by a title company, and the owner of the properties into which Newport Avenue has been incorporated has requested the City Council to take action to correct the prior ordinance. Are there any questions of the attorney on this matter?
While we're talking about the agenda, we have 4 public hearings. We'll take them one at a time. The first will be the action plan, and then the annual operating budget, and then the CIP, and then the real estate tax increase. I'll open and close each public hearing. And Madam City Clerk, would you refresh our memory on our rules about speaking at public hearings and non-agenda speakers, please?
Yes, sir. According to council's rules, citizens may speak under public hearing, the agenda items. If they want to speak as a non-agenda speaker, they cannot speak under the public hearing. So if during the public hearing session, if they're signed up as a non-agenda speaker, they will not be called on once we get to that portion. They have to choose whether they're going to be agenda item or non-agenda.
Okay. So if some, yes, sir.
I think council needs to revisit that rule. I don't really see the sense of it, because if a public hearing issue is on something totally different, which it usually is, then what an agenda item is, why would you not want to allow a citizen to speak at both? Unless there's some logic behind it that I'm missing. What is the rationale to why council desires that?
Well, they can speak on all the public hearing and the agenda items. They just can't do all the public hearing agenda items and non-agenda speaker.
Right.
So they have to pick and choose.
That's what I'm saying. What's the logic behind, with council, behind why that is the case? If someone wants to speak on a non-agenda item that's not part of our agenda, why would we not?
Well, somebody just got longer tenure.
Nobody don't know.
I'm
Probably just always been that way.
Yeah, it's been that way for a long time, and I don't know that there is any logic in it, quite frankly. I have no problem with changing it, but I think we would have to change council rules, amend the rules to do that. I have no problem with it.
How many times in the history of public hearings, non-agenda speakers and agenda items have we had that several citizens wanted to speak? I know that the time limit was shorter at, 3 minutes at one point in time. So when they're speaking to all 3
5 minutes.
areas, but how many times have we had more than one issue being addressed under all 3 items?
Before this rule came into place, it was quite often. And that was part, because you had the same people speaking on every item and then turn around and speak as non-agenda speakers. And it was council's decision that they had to choose whether they're going to speak on agenda items or non-agenda. And if they wanted to speak on agenda items, then they would have to come back and do the non-agenda. But that was council's decision.
Sure.
Yeah, I would like for council to consider at the next meeting, I guess we would have to hear from the attorney what the procedures would be to change that rule, because I thought the purpose of our council meetings is to hear from citizens. And I don't think it would be too much of an abuse, and so I would be in favor of changing it.
I'd be in favor of that because all 4 hearing the citizens. But if we do decide to go that direction, it needs to be very specific. They can speak on all the hearings and the agenda items, but if they come back as a non-agenda speaker, it needs to be non-agenda, not reiterating something they've already spoke about previously in the night, because that's the point of it being a non-agenda. So we'd have to, make sure those rules are followed.
Once they're up there, you have no way of controlling.
I don't have a problem with what they with what they speak on. I mean, citizens have a right to speak to us.
Okay. Is there a consensus to have the city attorney draft up language to reflect this conversation?
Yes.
And bring it back to the next meeting? Is that a consensus with everyone?
But can we be sure, I know at our last meeting, when we had the CIP versus the budget, we had people who stood up and talked about things that were completely unrelated to either.
And I gave them the leeway to do that.
Yeah.
In an abundance of being, as Dr. Whitaker said, hearing from the public. Yeah, and I got it. And I'll make it clear tonight that this public hearing is on this one.
Action plan.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it was just some confusion. I
Yeah.
don't think that was their intent.
Right.
They just
No, I agree.
And I was part of that confusion. So we're very good point. All right, so you got your homework?
Yes, yeah, Mayor, I'm making notes right now.
Okay.
I have 3 more things.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, Mayor and members of council, you have 3 report backs in front of you. One is the Workforce and Development Internal Vacancy Report back. The other is the Portsmouth Public Schools Bus Fleet report back. And the third is the regional salary comparisons for superintendents and assistant superintendents. And if you notice in the paragraph of the assistant superintendents, we found that regional public school divisions that were surveyed do not all have the same positions or titles. Some refer to them as chiefs. Some of them are under other titles, so we could not make any comparatives as it came to assistant superintendents within the region. The next item I'd like to call to your attention, I sent you 2 emails, and one the chief spoke to yesterday in regard to there have been 2 articles in the paper today on the front page, and I shared with you that yesterday, please be advised that this matter regarding the police matter remains under investigation by the Virginia State Police and reviewed by the Commonwealth Attorney. So shared that with you yesterday. Then the other is an article which is on the front page entitled, "Where are the streetlights in Portsmouth? It's a secret." And I just want to share with you members of council that the city knows where their streetlights are. The city knows where their streetlights are. Dominion Energy bills the city for lights in groups, and that is a monthly bill. And the request that was made by the pilot in researching the information, because the database for all lights that are with Dominion Energy is held by Dominion Energy, and as staff indicated, if you're looking for a database for the 10,000 plus lights that we have, 700 and something like 10,747 lights we have, the specific database is there, but we have the bills, and you want 3 years back. We can research that data. We provided the cost for the staff to research it. It would have cost $133.50, and in the article I saw where Suffolk paid $100, but the request was not forwarded where the research or the money that it would take to provide the information was not coming forth. So we do know where our streets are, and Bernadette Hogg pretty much knows the tag numbers and works with Dominion Energy almost on a weekly basis where there's an outage or something that it pertains to lights.
Any questions?
I just have a question on the report back pertaining to the regional salary. And the title of it, it says regional salary comparisons for superintendents and assistant superintendents. The figures that you've reported for Portsmouth, are those salary figures
Are these salary figures?
for Portsmouth?
Yeah, these are figures that came out of their books.
No, that's not what I'm asking. Your title says salary.
Yeah.
Right. I'm asking, the figure that you have up here, is that a salary figure?
Yes, I would say it is a salary figure. Mrs. Oglesby?
Yes, ma'am.
Mayor, Vice Mayor.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council, good evening. Yes, Dr. Whitaker, it's salary taken out of their budget book.
Yeah, no, well, what I'm asking, because first of all, this wasn't a request by council. It was a request by Councilwoman Simmons, and I didn't see any type of request for consensus from council to direct the city manager to even look up this information. When you put out a report like this and you call it salary, you can't just say I went to the books and pull the figure. My question is, because it's interesting that you're trying to show that the superintendent in Portsmouth is the highest paid superintendent in the region. That's what you're doing. And my question is this a salary figure?
According to their budget book, yes.
Well, I know it's not, because I was on the school board when we brought Dr. Bracy on board, and I know that's not a pure salary figure. And I'm curious, what questions did you ask these localities and districts when you were requesting this information? Because these figures here, they do not include benefits. You included the benefits for the superintendent, therefore it has inflated the figure to make it appear that it's a pure salary, and it is not a pure salary.
Well,
That
Dr.
includes benefits.
First, show us where it is for superintendent. We're looking right in the 2018-19.
This is my concern with presentations that have been coming from the administration. Give misinformation to the public. Now, when someone reads this, they're going to think that the superintendent in Portsmouth is the highest paid superintendent in the region, and his salary is $247,850. That's not true. That's not the salary figure. And they're going to think that all of these other figures up here are inclusive of benefit and salary, and that's not the case. And if you're going to put a document out like this, you ought to at least be forthright and call it for what it is. This is a compensation package. That's not just a salary.
Well,
and I doubt very seriously if all of these other figures up here include the benefits of these superintendents. And my concern is that it appears that there's some type of backlash against the superintendent now trying to present in a negative light a figure that does not accurately portray what it is supposed to be. And I'm deeply disturbed about what you're trying to do here.
Okay, understand your point. Are you asking for more detail?
I don't need more detail. They have mispresented and misrepresented figures to us. That is, this says regional salary comparison. These are not salaries.
I got
The
it.
figure for the superintendent includes his benefit package. These other figures do not probably include benefit package, so it makes it appears as if the superintendent is the highest paid in the region, and I know that's not correct.
Okay,
And,
thank you.
and they know it's not correct because you have access to his contract.
I have access to.
Yes, it's a public document. The Virginia Pilot has his
It
contract.
may, Dr.
It's a
Whitaker, but
public
this is,
document.
we are looking at what is in this document.
Yeah,
The school board's
but I'm
document.
saying it's not a matter of looking. You all are professionals. You should be able to interpret. And you know that interpreting his contract, this is not a salary figure. That's not a salary figure.
I'm
And
going to recognize now.
and I'm not finished. And the other figures up here, they do not represent just inclusive of benefits. So why would you present to the public apples and oranges and then try to, and you put in bold
I'm getting there.
that he's the highest paid superintendent in the region, and that's not true.
All right, understand your point. Let's hear from other members of council. Nate, you had your hand up.
Yeah, this is in reference, I think this is important information that we need to know. And part of this came from last night when we were talking about the percentages that goes to, classroom versus administration, and some of that is where this information came from. These are the numbers that we have that, Dr. Patton has researched and provided us for our information. And when the comment is that it's probably this or that, then that's opinion-based without research. This is information provided by our city manager and her team, so I have no reason to disbelieve these numbers. There's, I don't feel there's any kind of misintent or anything. There would be no reason for that, but, to basically have a verbal attack on our city manager for something that probably or maybe, that's not specifics. So I don't like that kind of, verbiage. It's just not needed in here. But, this is just information that it was requested by Vice Mayor Simmons, but we all got a copy of the email, so we were aware of it, that she asked information. So it was just a question, and this is just the response to the question that was asked. And, I'm always just happy to get as much information as possible to use to make a decision.
Well, I'm interested in accurate information.
Hold
And
on, you
let me
don't
just
have
say
the
this.
floor.
Let me say this.
I got the
because-
floor.
I know, but see, this is what I'm saying
I got
with
the
you.
floor.
See, I've sat back and observed on several occasions, you allow Mr. Moody to talk without being recognized. You did it 3 times last night. And now when I do it, it becomes an issue. But go right ahead. I'll play by the game, but apply the rules to everybody. Because Mr. Moody talks out of turn frequently. We never stop him.
I don't think
But
so.
I don't mind. Hey, it's all right. It's all right. I don't
think
mind.
so.
The rule, hey, I'm used
All
to
right, let's-
the rule being changed. No big issue.
Our valuable resource is time. Phil, you got the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I was going to suggest, before we get wrapped around the axle on what's probably and what's accurate, that we task the manager to come back at the next opportunity and validate what the figures include,
We will.
And let's make sure we're comparing apples with apples. That's all. I don't think it's our job to say that she intentionally
Did anything.
did anything. The figures that she got from our school board and figures she got from, I guess, the other cities. So let's just identify what they are. And I think we're looking for net gross salaries.
That's my concern as well. I do want to know now if these figures do actually include, is it a compensation package or if it is the actual salary?
All right, we can validate
I'd
that.
like to know.
Did you have your hand up? No.
No.
Okay. All right.
Let me,
I know what it is.
let me say, I don't make statements, opinion without fact. Every statement I made is not an opinion, it is factual. And the city manager, and you can call it an attack, maybe you have a limited vocabulary, but I'm pointing out a truism that the figures that are represented here on this document are not comparing localities the same. The Portsmouth superintendent's salary is not $247,850. The administration knows this because they have access to the contract because it's a public document. And I know for a fact the superintendent's contract spells out his salary and benefit package. Why the rush to put this together for tonight? To me, that is something to be questioned. And so it's not an attack. I'm giving a statement of fact, and I know that these figures up here are not comparing salaries and benefits. I know that for a fact. And so when persons try to tell me what I know, it's not for them to try to read my mind when they definitely have not put time into research as I have. And so I just want to make that clear. I'm not attacking, I'm not speculating. I'm telling the truth. And what is being attacked is education. That's what's being attacked. And so I'm standing by what I said, and I don't understand why we rush to get something out like this tonight. And I got an idea why.
Okay, we have a request from Bill and Lisa that we ask the city manager come back with the details that make up these numbers.
Yes.
Is that the?
Yes.
I would ask that this report be retracted because it is not accurate. It is not an accurate report.
Let's
And
take one issue at a
we should be putting misinformation out to the public. If they're not sure, then why is it being presented?
Dr. Whitaker, we're going to take one issue at a time. Okay. And I saw a consensus from Ray and Bill, Elisa, myself.
Yes.
Sure.
Okay.
I'll come back.
All right.
Now, my other issue is this should be
Speaking
retracted.
of being recognized.
It's not accurate.
Does anybody want this retracted? I think it's like an error. Once you shoot it, you can't get it back.
You said what?
I said it's much like a shooting an arrow. Once you shoot it, you can't get it back.
It's out there.
Yeah. So we understand your position, Dr. Whitaker, and the consensus of everybody, including you, is to have the city manager come back with a detailed comparison
I
of
shall.
salary and benefits and deferred compensation and car allowances.
Okay.
Okay.
I did have a question about the school bus fleet.
Yes.
Chief.
Subject.
Yes. I know that from 2015 to 2019, for the projected fiscal years, the S&Q allocation was roughly $600,000, and there's now a total balance of the $3,239,000 that we were supposed to get from this time period. Are we still looking to recoup that, or are we writing this off, or just where are we with that?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of City Council, 5 years ago, City Council approved a 5-year, $1 million a year to upgrade the bus fleet. With that 5-year period in the document, which described what the million coming forth would do, and then what the SOQ funds that would come from the state, because the state does provide school systems with SOQ funds for transportation, for buses. And these are the amounts, and it was agreed that once that money comes back, then the city would get the money back, having already put up $1 million to buy the buses. Over the 5 years, and I've been here 2 of the years, it started before I came, there has been no money to come back, but the SOQ money does go to the schools for buses.
Correctly?
Yes. You're correct. Okay, I know
The
you were.
money- Do we know that the money's come back from the state
Yes.
to the school system?
Yes.
Have we asked the question, where's the money?
I asked the question, particularly during last year's budget, and it was like, well, it wasn't signed, or we didn't know, or whatever. But I have the memorandum. And it was to the superintendent. There were 3 people copying it. At that time, it was Dr. Stuckwish and 2 other people are copied on the memorandum. It states it right in the memorandum.
So of course, this happened before majority of us were here. But if this was agreement for $1 million up front a year, and we're supposed to get the state allocation back, and so now it appears that we're owed over $3 million. So if something isn't done with that, then my opinion is, why are we giving them another $1 million this year that we're not going to get our money back?
Absolutely.
So if something can't come to a decision about the money that we've been owed, then I don't think we should give them another $1 million. There's, other things that need to be addressed if that's the case.
Right. And if you want me to go through this, I can, because it's clear information. Beginning in FY13 budget, Portsmouth Public Schools capital projects are included in the city's capital improvement program. With the adoption of the FY 2014 budget, City Council agreed to fund $1 million per year for 5 years to buy new buses. The first round of buses were purchased in 2013. Also, any standard of quality funding received by PPS for school bus replacement over the 5-year period is to be transferred to the city's capital improvement program. The following table illustrates the appropriation by funding year from the state to Portsmouth Public Schools for the school bus replacement. To date, the city has not received any of these funds to assist with the purchase of school buses. The process for school bus replacement. At the request of Portsmouth Public Schools Transportation Division, the city garage reviews the maintenance and repair records for each school bus and makes a recommendation on the number of buses for replacement. Portsmouth Public Schools determined the final number of buses to purchase. After receiving the school recommendations, the city moves forward with the purchase. Upon receipt, all new buses are titled to Portsmouth Public Schools. Currently, there is not a state mandate for bus life cycle, and that was a question that was asked. Does the state say when a bus has to be taken out of cycle? It does not. Best practice recommends replacement between 12 to 15 years. The average age of PPS bus fleet is approximately 8.5 years old, so the bus fleet is up to date. The allocation of $1 million purchase approximately 10 to 11 buses per year. Since FY 2014, a total of 59 buses were purchased, with 11 new buses arriving this fiscal year. Currently, there is a total of 139 buses in the fleet, to include the 11 new buses. And it just shows the number of buses by year and their age. And then the question was asked of us whether or not the schools had ever considered leasing buses. And the answer was no. And then we also spoke with Mike worked with the Sony Merrimaid, a current state of Virginia school bus supply, and he informed us that the company does not lease any school buses to any municipalities. And we checked with other Virginia bus contractors and received the same information. So it seems like no school systems in the state lease buses. They all purchase buses. And any city maintains the school's operation support vehicles. He was asking about the white fleet. Vehicle Vehicle Services maintains 92 vehicles that are in the white fleet, and that's what they call their car fleet. And we also maintain their buses.
How do we know that leasing finance option is more expensive than purchasing a bus outright if we've never put a bid out for a lease?
Well, when we receive the information and talking with the bus companies, that most municipalities, they know of none in the state that lease buses. All of those in the state are buying the buses. We didn't go forward to say what would it cost.
That doesn't tell you anything.
Right.
That people haven't looked into doing it. I know there are commercial fleets that are leased, and when you lease a fleet, you can either have a lease that includes maintenance or one that doesn't include maintenance. So there are options. I'm saying it would be worth exploring. It doesn't cost anything to look into it.
Well, with Mr. Strickland and the team that maintain the buses who work with Portsmouth Public Schools, we'll go back to them and ask, and with Mr. Ammons to just ask to explore that, what kind of information could they provide or find.
Right.
And I think you're going to find, Bill, that they have looked at what other school systems across the country do. And that information can be easily obtained through the National League of Cities because they also get involved. And I think they have looked at it across the country, not only just Virginia. At least that's what we did when I was many years ago.
Will you factor that in?
Yes, sir. I've made note of it.
I have one question. Could we also get a report back on those 92 vehicles and what they're for? Because that seems like an awful large fleet of vehicles for our school system. So I'd be curious as to what they're designated for and the ages and values of those vehicles, because what the maintenance is every year plus fuel consumption, that's got to be a lot of money with that number of vehicles.
Other questions? Did you say that there was an agreement between the city and the school administration?
I got the letter, which was a letter of agreement.
All right. Everybody clear on? Yes, sir.
So when you asked about, what did you say the response was?
They didn't know because they weren't here. Dr. Suckwich is on was the superintendent, and there are two other names on there. I can't remember. Well, the memorandum came from the city manager, who was John Rowe at the time. He copied 3 people on it, but it may have been Pendarvis and someone else, but those people are not there. So they probably may not even known about the letter, but I did in my first year here call it to their attention.
So what was the year of this agreement?
The beginning with 2013 budget.
So the city was aware of the agreement.
Those who were here, I guess. What do you mean the city was aware?
The city was aware that there was an agreement. This wasn't some secretive agreement. It was the city. You said the city manager was Mr. Rowe.
Yeah. So there's documentation of the Right.
So did the city hold the school board to its obligation?
No, that's what I'm saying. No.
And based on the number of buses you say have been purchased, does that mean we're pretty sure they didn't go buy some buses with this $650,000 a year?
No, we buy all the buses.
They haven't bought any buses?
No.
So they could have used the money for anything.
All righty. Any other questions? Right.
I wanted to get back to the article in the paper about my company.
Go ahead.
And as Dr. Patton mentioned, every streetlight has its own address and identification number. We have maps internally that show where everyone is located. there are in every city, in the city manager's office, or even sometimes the engineering office, there's a liaison that works pretty much daily and weekly with our folks in addressing issues with streetlights. We also have a streetlight relamping program that every 4 to 6 years, depending on the type of light, we mass replace bulbs. So we know where they are. The city knows where they are. I'm not sure of the purpose or what they were trying to get at with that article, other than it slow news time, trying to make a story. That's the best but in every city, we've worked daily and weekly talking and communicating about streetlights, especially those that are out. And that's how it's handled. So I think it's ludicrous, the article, and I don't know what they were trying to prove or say, but now we actually did an inventory of all of the streetlights about several years ago in the entire state, and to reevaluate where they were, and we kind of worked with the cities. And in some cases, I can tell you money was refunded to most of the cities for ones that hadn't been properly documented and were kind of lost in the shuffle. So again, that's basically how it works.
So we know where the lights are.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Mrs. Hogue is our person that works every day with Virginia.
About 15 years ago, there was a task force on streetlights, and there was a list that people used to identify areas that needed additional lighting, which brings me to the question: what is the process? And Mayor, I would like staff to get back with us on that, on what the process is for communities that feel that they need additional lighting. Who do they contact? What's the determining factor on whether their request is granted or not?
Okay, we could get that back
Are
to you.
everybody clear on that?
Yes.
Bill is asking for what is the process for asking for streetlight?
Yes.
What criteria is used to determine whether or not one is warranted?
Right.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Brings us to City Council liaison reports. Brett?
I did attend the EDA Planning Commission meeting, but nothing.
Okay.
At the last meeting, I requested that the Timmons Group make a presentation. I would just inquire about the status of that.
They're scheduled for June 25th. We tried to get them in May, but they're booked for May, so we have scheduled for June 25th. And I've gotten with the city clerk and on our calendar.
Perfect.
Okay, yes, just a couple of PRHA updates from that meeting. The meetings are now being recorded, and the videos will be uploaded to the website the Monday following their board meeting. So they met last Thursday, so this Monday they should be available for review for anyone who's interested in that information. They did execute a lease agreement with Design Craft. That was the T-Mobile tower that they were going to place up. The board was not able to approve the subdivision of the property due to the lack of road frontage, so they're going to be leasing that property to Design Craft. They also passed an adoption of an ethics policy for PRHA, and that will be also on their website for anyone who wants to review that. And they will be partnering with the health department to provide a resource center in Swanson Homes. So they will provide an offering of blood screenings and different kind of screenings that those residents can take advantage of.
I report.
Yes, last week we had the Hampton Roads Regional Jail Authority meeting. Just updates from that is there's still currently 30 vacancies at the location. They have converted some positions from sworn positions to civilian because they didn't need a certified correctional officer. Like one example was like the mail room and some things like that. They can utilize civilians. So they're doing that to help increase the staff of the correctional officers. They're currently employing 7 part-time employees, 6 are sworn, and 1 is a civilian. They've been able to cut back the mandatory overtime. They're requiring each correctional officer to do 1 mandatory overtime shift each 28-day cycle, which currently had been higher than that. One reason that is because they just recently graduated 10 new correctional officers from the Hampton Roads Regional Academy. There were some other issues regarding to our medical payments, but that was discussed in closed session, so I cannot go into detail with that at this time. So that's it for the Regional Jail Board. Last week also had the Parking Authority meeting. Basically, this meeting, we were all discussing the bylaws, and we're addressing, updating the bylaws. And I just want to tell you, they definitely need to be updating, because as we were reading through them, it said on here, if you had to change the meeting, you could notify the person by the address or delivering such notice to him by telephone or telegraph. So I think that's been a little while since that was done.
Is that Western Union?
Yes. So it's a MoneyGram. But so they definitely need to be working on now. But one thing that has come up we were looking at is the Parking Authority is designed to have 5 members appointed by council. I had asked a question the other day because the number of people in there. So I guess as it stands now, they're looking at myself as one of the board members and the voting body, but I think that's something we might need to change and had a personnel committee maybe add a 5th citizen to it, and just my position be the liaison, because I don't think I should be in there voting on that. So that's just something we can look at and possibly appoint a 5th person to that committee. So, and that's all the updates.
No, we've heard from the school.
From HR TAC, Jim Mutterback, who is the current Suffolk District Administrator for VDOT, is going to become the project engineer for the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel, which is going to be a big project, the biggest one undertaken by VDOT ever. And it will be a project that goes for 6 years. So we'll miss Jim. And Jim was recognized by the Senate with the House concurring for the job that he's done here in Hampton Roads. With that, we have a need for a closed session. May I have a motion?
I move to go into closed meeting, A, pursuant to Virginia Code subsection 2.2-3711A.1, for the purpose of discussing and considering prospective candidates for and appointees to boards and commissions, and B, pursuant to Virginia Code subsection 2.2-3711A.7, for the purpose of consulting with legal counsel employed by the city regarding specific matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel, specifically regarding the city attorney's regular report to city council on the activities of his office.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, and it's been duly made and seconded. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mrs. Lucas-Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Moody?
Yes.
Ms. Simmons?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Dr. Whitaker?
Yes.
Mayor Rowe?
Yes. We're in closed session.